An American soccer superstar dies in a car crash, just 24 hours before signing the biggest contract of his career. The media called it a tragedy, but his closest friend received one final message. If anything happens, don't believe what they say. From that moment, she uncovers a truth the entire world is trying to bury. Football didn't kill him. Silence did. 4 a.m. The 836 Expressway, Miami, the pre-dawn silence usually broken only by the distant hum of the city, was brutally shattered by the piercing wail of sirens. A cacophony that sliced through the humid Florida air, growing louder, more insistent, with every passing second. Flashing red and blue lights painted the asphalt in a macabre dance, reflecting off the twisted, unrecognizable metal of what was once a marvel of engineering. A crimson McLaren 720S, a machine designed for exhilarating speed and effortless grace, now lay twisted and mangled, its once sleek form a grotesque parody of its former glory. Half straddling the concrete median, its carbon fiber shell was crushed inward, the driver's side a gaping, jagged wound, revealing the horrifying aftermath within. Smoke, thick and acrid, curled lazily from its crumpled hood like a final, mournful breath, mingling with the sickening scent of burnt rubber and spilled fuel. This was the end. The end of a car, yes, but more profoundly, the end of a life believed to be the brightest star in American soccer history. Darren Cole, 28 years old. The name echoed across every sports channel, every news feed, every waking thought of millions. A national icon, a prodigy whose talent had transcended the sport, making him synonymous with triumph, unparalleled skill, and an almost mythical rise to fame. His face, once beaming from billboards and magazine covers, was now a somber image accompanying breaking news alerts. Just 24 hours before signing a monumental £180 million contract with Brighton and Hove Albion, a deal that would have cemented his legacy, secured his future beyond imagination, and elevated him to a global superstar status, a true legend in the making. He had simply vanished. Now he was found, in a wreck, dead. The news ripped through the early morning like a wildfire, leaving a trail of shock, disbelief, and a profound sense of loss across the nation. The media, always quick to craft a narrative that fit neatly into a soundbite, rushed to judgment. The need for an immediate answer, a digestible explanation, was paramount. Headlines screamed across every screen, from the largest jumbotrons in Times Square to the smallest smartphone displays. Tragedy strikes. Darren Cole dies in apparent accident due to psychological stress. It was a convenient, almost comforting explanation. A tragic end to a brilliant career, attributed to the immense, crushing pressures of the game. A narrative that allowed everyone to mourn, to sympathize with the perceived fragility of genius, and then to move on. The story was neat, contained, and required no further questions. But for Maya Green, a sharp-witted sports journalist whose pen was as precise as Darren's footwork, and his closest confidant, that explanation was a hollow echo, a dissonant chord in the symphony of her grief. Her heart ached with a sorrow so raw, so sudden, it felt like a physical blow, a gaping void where laughter and shared dreams once resided. Yet her mind, ever analytical, ever skeptical of easy answers, rebelled fiercely against the official story. Darren's last text message, a chilling whisper from the precipice of his life, burned in her memory, its words searing into her consciousness, a constant nagging doubt. If anything happens, Don't believe what they say. It was a desperate plea, a cryptic warning, and now a haunting prophecy that demanded to be understood. She immediately drove to the scene, her journalist's instincts overriding her personal sorrow, a desperate, almost primal need for answers propelling her forward. The police tape, a yellow barrier against the truth, the flashing lights that pulsed rhythmically, the grim, hardened faces of the first responders. It all blurred into a chaotic tableau. Her eyes, usually warm and expressive, reflecting her passionate nature and keen intellect, were now cold, dissecting every detail, searching for the anomaly, the crack in the official facade. The asphalt, dry and unforgiving under the faint glow of streetlights, bore no skid marks. None. A high-speed crash, a vehicle obliterated, yet no desperate attempt to brake. It defied every law of physics, every instinct of survival. And the witnesses? None. On a major expressway, even at 4 a.m, someone always saw something. A late-night commuter, an early morning delivery driver, a lone jogger. But here, only silence and the lingering scent of destruction, as if the very air refused to speak. Darren's past, too, resurfaced in her thoughts, a dark, unresolved shadow that had always lingered. A peculiar mark from 2014, when he was mysteriously cut from the U18 national team for vague internal reasons, a decision that had baffled everyone at the time, given his undeniable talent and rising star. He had bounced back, yes, with a resilience that had only added to his legend. But that unexplained dismissal had always felt like a loose thread in the otherwise flawless tapestry of his career. It was a secret, a quiet anomaly that Maya had never quite forgotten. Now, as she stood amidst the wreckage, a chilling, undeniable certainty settled deep in her bones. This was no mere accident. This was a story. A dark, dangerous, and deeply personal story, woven with threads of deceit and betrayal. And she, Maya Green, was going to uncover its brutal truth, no matter the cost, no matter the danger. The official narrative, a carefully constructed facade of grief and psychological strain, began to crumble under Maya's relentless scrutiny. She knew the truth lay buried not in the present's convenient lies, but in the echoes of a past Darren had desperately tried to outrun. With grim determination, she locked herself away in her cramped apartment, transforming it into a war room. Old laptops hummed, dusty hard drives whirred, and stacks of yellowed sports magazines and obscure online articles littered every surface. Days blurred into nights as she delved deeper into his early career, sifting through arcane player databases and forgotten online forums where whispers of scandals often lingered before being swept under the rug. Each search result, each faded photograph, felt like a piece of a puzzle she was desperate to solve. The digital breadcrumbs, faint but persistent, led her to a startling revelation, a buried secret that sent a cold shiver down her spine. Darren Cole, the national hero, had once been suspended indefinitely in 2018. The reason? His alleged involvement in a match-fixing scandal in Morocco. Back then, he was just a young, unknown talent, desperate to make his mark in a ruthless world that often demanded compromise, silence, and sometimes a piece of your soul. This was the dark stain, the hidden shame he had meticulously worked to bury beneath layers of dazzling goals and public adoration. The discovery hit Maya with a wave of complex emotions. Shock at the revelation, a pang of disappointment for her friend, but also a fierce surge of determination. This wasn't just a rumor. It was a concrete fact that reshaped everything she thought she knew about Darren. Maya knew she needed to speak to someone who had been there, someone who understood the murky waters Darren had navigated. She sought out Javier, a former teammate of Darren's from those tumultuous early days in the lower leagues. Javier, now a retired, weathered man with the quiet resignation of someone who had seen too much, initially resisted. It took several persistent calls and a promise of absolute discretion before he finally agreed to meet her in a dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of Miami, a place where anonymity was almost guaranteed. He nursed a cup of bitter black coffee, his hands calloused, his eyes clouded with distant memories. Darren had a past, yes, Javier admitted, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. It wasn't clean. He made mistakes, like all of us caught in that swamp of desperation and easy money. The pressure was immense. Young, ambitious, with families depending on them, dreams of escaping poverty. It was easy to get lured in. The promises were sweet, the threats even sweeter. They'd dangle a contract, then threaten your family, your career, everything you ever worked for. It was a vicious cycle. He took a long, slow sip. But he also had a code, a set of principles that kept him from sinking completely. He had lines he wouldn't cross, even when others pushed him. He saw things that made him sick. He almost quit. No one gets out of that mud without getting dirty, Maya. But Darren, he never let himself drown. He fought his way out, clawing his way back to the surface, driven by a fierce, unyielding refusal to be owned, to be a puppet. Javier's words painted a complex, almost tragic picture of a young man caught in a moral quagmire, struggling to maintain his integrity amidst pervasive corruption, hinting at a deeper, internal struggle within Darren. Driven by a growing sense of urgency, Maya tirelessly scoured old interviews, obscure documentaries, and forgotten fan pages. Anything that might offer a glimpse into Darren's true self, beyond the polished public persona. Days bled into nights, fueled by strong coffee and an unyielding need for answers. Her apartment became a fortress of information, sticky notes and timelines plastering her walls. Her persistence, a trait that had defined her career, finally paid off. After countless dead ends and frustrating hours, late one night, almost giving up, she stumbled upon it. Tucked away in a forgotten corner of a regional sports network's digital archive, buried deep within a folder labeled Unused Footage, 2019, she found it. A raw, unedited clip from an interview Darren had given years ago. A segment that had been deemed too controversial, too honest, to ever see the light of day. In the grainy footage, a younger Darren, still with the boyish charm that had captivated fans, but already possessing an intense, almost haunted gaze, looked directly into the camera. His voice, though softer than the confident tones she knew from his later, more polished interviews, carried an undeniable conviction, a raw vulnerability that tore at Maya's heart. I made mistakes, he confessed, his eyes holding a flicker of pain and profound regret. It's a heavy burden, a shadow I carry every single day, a constant reminder of what I almost lost, of the person I almost became. But it taught me something crucial, something I live by now. Never again will I allow others to make my mistakes for me. I will never betray myself again, not for money, not for fame, not for anything. Never again will I be a pawn in someone else's game. I will fight for what's right, no matter the cost, no matter the enemies I make, because some truths, they just have to come out. His words, a solemn vow whispered from the past, resonated with an almost unbearable weight, filling the quiet room, echoing in Maya's mind. It was a declaration of defiance, a promise to himself, and now, a chilling, undeniable clue for Maya. She knew, with a certainty that tightened her gut and sent a shiver down her spine, that Darren had been trying to break free, to expose the very darkness that had once ensnared him. He wasn't just a victim. He was a warrior trying to reveal the truth, and that truth had likely cost him his life. The pieces were starting to connect, forming a terrifying picture of a man who died not by accident, but by design, a sacrifice in a silent war. The chilling revelation from Darren's past, coupled with his final desperate message, propelled Maya into the next phase of her investigation with a renewed, almost desperate urgency. If Darren was a living bomb, as Javier had implied, then who was trying to defuse him? And more importantly, who had lit the fuse? The most obvious and now most suspicious figure was Vincent Parr, Darren's slick, notoriously cunning agent. Parr, a man known for his impeccably tailored suits, his smooth-talking demeanor, and even sharper, often cutthroat deals, had vanished without a trace immediately after Darren's death. His sudden, unexplained disappearance was not just suspicious, it screamed complicity, a desperate flight from impending exposure. Maya knew that if anyone held the keys to Darren's final days, to the secrets he was about to unleash, it was Vincent. Her search for Parr began with his opulent office, a gleaming glass and steel fortress nestled amidst the towering skyscrapers of downtown Miami. The building's security was notoriously tight, a labyrinth of keycards and surveillance cameras. But Maya, a master of journalistic subterfuge honed by years of chasing elusive stories, found a way in. Under the cloak of late evening, she slipped past the unsuspecting late-night cleaning crew, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Inside, Parr's office was a chaotic mess, a stark contrast to his usual meticulous facade. Drawers were pulled open, papers scattered across the polished desk and plush carpet, as if someone had frantically searched for something, or hastily packed in a desperate rush. The air hung heavy with the scent of stale coffee and desperation. Amidst the disarray, tucked beneath a stack of unsigned contracts for various rising stars, Maya's fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. A small, discreet digital voice recorder, barely larger than her thumb. Her breath hitched. This was it. Her heart pounded as she pressed play, the tiny device feeling impossibly heavy in her palm. What she heard sent a jolt through her entire system, a heated argument, raw and unfiltered, between Darren and Vincent, recorded just days before Darren's death. Vincent, voice tight with barely suppressed rage, almost a snarl. "You signed the damn papers, Darren. You want to throw away everything? The biggest deal of your life? The legacy we built?" His voice rose, laced with a desperate plea mixed with thinly veiled threats. Darren, voice strained but resolute, a steel edge Maya rarely heard, a quiet fury simmering beneath the surface. "I'm not signing again, Vincent. Not for them. I'm not giving them another chance to turn me into their puppet, to control my life, my image, my very soul. I deceived once. Yes, I was naive, I was desperate. But I won't do it again. Not for this. Not for them. Not when I know what they truly are." The recording ended abruptly, leaving Maya with a chilling echo of Darren's defiance, a final, desperate stand against unseen forces. The questions hung heavy in the air, more pressing than ever. What had he deceived about? beyond the Morocco incident Javier mentioned. And who, exactly, were them? The way Darren had said it, the emphasis on them suggested a powerful, overarching entity. Driven by these new, urgent questions, Maya dug deeper into Vincent Parr's professional connections, tracing the intricate web of his dealings. It didn't take long to find a recurring, ominous name: Phoenix Group, a colossal Asian betting conglomerate. Phoenix Group wasn't just a major player in the gambling world. They were a shadowy entity, known for their aggressive, almost predatory expansion into sports media, talent management, and their controversial, high-profile sponsorship of major global events, including the recent World Cup in Qatar. They were less a betting company and more a financial octopus, with dark, far-reaching tentacles reaching into every corner of the global sports economy, influencing everything from player transfers to league decisions. Vincent Parr had not only brokered numerous high-value deals with them, but had also held significant, undisclosed shares in several smaller sports agencies recently acquired by Phoenix, a clear conflict of interest and a sign of deeper allegiance. Maya's mind raced, connecting the dots with terrifying speed. If Darren was refusing to sign again, and Vincent was so deeply tied to Phoenix Group, it could only mean one thing. Darren wasn't just exposing a single match-fixing incident from his past. He was on the verge of publicly revealing a vast, intricate system of global match-fixing and financial manipulation, a meticulously orchestrated network designed to control player transfers, manipulate game outcomes, and launder billions through the seemingly legitimate world of professional sports. All orchestrated by powerful, unseen entities like Phoenix Group. Darren Cole, the Golden Boy, the symbol of American soccer, was about to blow the whistle on the very foundation of modern soccer's commercial empire, a truth so explosive it could bring the entire structure crashing down. And someone, somewhere, had decided he had to be stopped. The revelation of Phoenix Group's insidious reach and Darren's desperate stand against them solidified Maya's conviction. This was far bigger than a single player or a single match. This was about power, money, and the dark underbelly of a sport worshipped by millions. To navigate this treacherous terrain, Maya knew she needed an ally with deep knowledge of financial crime and organized corruption. Her thoughts immediately turned to Frank Reyes, a name whispered with reverence and caution in the circles of investigative journalism. Frank was a former Interpol investigator, a legend in the field of sports money laundering, known for his relentless pursuit of shadowy funds and his meticulous dossiers on the illicit investment groups that used football as their personal laundromat. He was a man who had seen the true face of greed, and it had left its indelible mark on his soul. Maya found Frank in a quiet, unassuming office, tucked away on the second floor of a nondescript building in a forgotten corner of Miami, far from the glitz and glamour of the city's sports arenas. The air was thick with the scent of stale cigarette smoke and the musty odor of old paper. Frank sat hunched over a desk piled high with yellowed files, his face etched by years of battling unseen enemies. His eyes, though tired, held a sharp, knowing glint, a weariness that spoke of countless battles fought and too many lost. Initially, Frank was resistant, almost dismissive. "I'm out, kid," he'd grumbled, his voice raspy like gravel. "Too many ghosts in this game. Too many good people buried under mountains of dirty money. You chase one, 10 more pop up." He gestured vaguely at the stacks of files. "This ain't a game for heroes, Maya. It's a meat grinder." But Maya, with her unwavering resolve and the raw, desperate truth of Darren's last message, slowly chipped away at his defenses. She didn't just present facts. She appealed to the very core of his being, the sense of justice that had once driven him. She spoke of Darren's courage, his fight for redemption, the chilling implications of his death, and the sheer audacity of the forces at play. She laid out the connections to Phoenix, Group, the missing agent, the suspicious contract. Frank listened, his gaze sharpening with each detail, a flicker of old fire rekindling in his tired eyes. The mention of Phoenix Group seemed to strike a nerve, a familiar, unwelcome name from his past cases, a hydra he thought he had helped sever a head from. He finally agreed, not for glory, but for the principle of it, for the silent victims, and perhaps for the ghosts that still haunted him from cases left unresolved. "All right, kid," he sighed, pushing a stack of files aside. "Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. But you better be ready. This kind of truth, it bites." Frank's first move was to delve into Darren's financial records, a labyrinth of offshore accounts, shell corporations, and complex international transactions that would make a seasoned accountant weep. He worked with a quiet intensity, his fingers flying across the keyboard, his mind piecing together the fragments of a financial crime. What he uncovered sent a jolt through both him and Maya, a cold dread settling in their stomachs. Darren had been insured for a staggering $50 million just 3 days before his death. The policy, a massive payout for accidental death, had been signed and processed by none other than Vincent Parr. The timing was too perfect, too sinister to be a mere coincidence. It wasn't just a life insurance policy. It was a death sentence with a price tag. But it was the contract with Brighton and Hove Albion that truly revealed the chilling depth of the conspiracy, the ultimate betrayal of a player's legacy. Frank, with his keen eye for legal loopholes and hidden clauses, discovered a particularly insidious provision buried deep within the fine print, an exclusive image rights clause that allowed the club, and by extension, its powerful financial partners like Phoenix Group, to commercially exploit Darren's image even after his death. His face, his name, his athletic prowess, all could be used in advertising, merchandise, and digital content, generating immense, untraceable profits for years to come. This wasn't just about a player. It was about a brand, a commodity to be bought, sold, and even profited from in death. If Darren was alive and defiant, refusing to play their game, he was a massive liability, a ticking time bomb of unwanted truths. But dead, his image could be controlled, sanitized, and leveraged for immense, untraceable profits, a silent, eternally marketable asset. His death, it seemed, was not just about silencing him, but about monetizing his very memory, turning his tragedy into a cold, calculated business opportunity for those who pulled the strings. The sheer callousness of it was breathtaking. The cold, calculated nature of Darren's death, revealed by the massive insurance policy and the grotesque image rights clause, sent a fresh wave of horror through Maya and Frank. This wasn't just murder. It was a corporate hit, a chilling testament to the lengths powerful entities would go to protect their empires and their bottom line. Frank's grim silence, punctuated only by the occasional sigh, confirmed Maya's worst fears. They needed to understand how this narrative was being controlled, how public perception was being molded, how the very truth was being suffocated under a blanket of manufactured grief. Their focus shifted to the architects of public image, the masters of spin, the ones who could turn black into white with a carefully worded press release. Their target, Veronica Shaw. Veronica Shaw was not just any PR director. She was a titan in the cutthroat world of sports communications, a woman whose reputation for ruthless efficiency and an almost supernatural ability to control narratives preceded her. Whispers in the industry spoke of her legendary track record for handling crises that would sink lesser professionals, from doping scandals that rocked European leagues to high-profile player arrests that threatened to dismantle entire franchises. Her name was synonymous with damage control, with turning public opinion on a dime, with making the unpalatable palatable. Now, as the director of communications for Brighton and Hove Albion, she was orchestrating the entire post-mortem narrative around Darren Cole, transforming his tragic end into a public spectacle of mourning and remembrance. Maya and Frank watched from the shadows, observing her every move. Veronica, with her impeccably coiffed blonde hair, designer suits, and an icy composure that never seemed to waver, meticulously planned a massive, multifaceted media campaign. It was ostensibly a tribute, a grand celebration of Darren's legacy. A series of heartfelt interviews with tearful teammates, carefully curated highlight reels, charity matches in his name, and a surge of merchandise featuring his image. But Maya saw through the veneer. It was a carefully constructed smokescreen, designed to bury the truth under a mountain of manufactured grief and hero worship, to distract from the inconvenient questions that might arise. The challenge was to get inside her inner circle, to find the cracks in her perfectly polished facade. Frank, leveraging his old contacts within the murky world of intelligence and corporate espionage, managed to get his hands on a highly sensitive, leaked audio recording from a clandestine internal meeting of the club's top brass. The meeting had been held just hours after Darren's death, a desperate scramble to control the fallout. Maya and Frank sat in Maya's dim apartment, the cheap speakers crackling as the recording played. The voices were hushed, urgent, and chillingly devoid of any genuine sorrow or concern for Darren. Veronica Shaw's voice, sharp and clinical, cut through the tension, her words like ice shards. Veronica, calm, almost detached, a chilling pragmatism in her tone. He refused to sign the new terms. He was becoming unpredictable, a liability. His moral compass was pointing in the wrong direction, threatening to expose too much. There was a brief, almost imperceptible pause, a collective intake of breath from the other attendees. The accident scenario is the most palatable. It's tragic, it's emotional, it generates sympathy. The public will grieve, then they will accept. It's cleaner. And most importantly, her voice dropped further, a chilling whisper that seemed to echo in the silent room where Maya and Frank listened, each word a hammer blow against their sense of justice. He's dead. Who's going to sue us now? Who's going to expose anything when the star witness is gone? His silence is far more valuable than his voice ever was. A faint, almost imperceptible chuckle could be heard from another voice in the room, a sound that made Maya's blood run cold, a sound of casual, horrifying indifference to human life. The recording ended, but its chilling implications lingered, a suffocating presence that filled the small apartment. Maya felt a profound sense of dread, a cold knot tightening in her stomach, a feeling of being utterly overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the evil they were uncovering. This wasn't just about covering up a crime. It was about a meticulously planned execution, a premeditated act designed not only to eliminate a threat, but to then profit obscenely from the aftermath. The truth wasn't just being suppressed. It had been twisted, manipulated, and buried under a carefully crafted narrative of tragedy, designed to be consumed by a grieving public. Maya realized, with a terrifying clarity that pierced through her journalistic detachment, that the forces they were up against weren't just powerful. They were utterly ruthless, devoid of conscience, capable of turning death itself into a public relations triumph, a cynical, profitable enterprise. The true horror wasn't Darren's accident, but the chilling realization that it was a perfectly executed play in a much larger, darker game, where human lives were mere pawns. The cold, clinical voices on the recording echoed in Maya's mind, a chilling testament to the sprawling conspiracy they were unraveling. The idea that Darren's death was not just planned, but meticulously orchestrated for profit and narrative control, filled her with a burning fury that threatened to consume her. Frank, equally disgusted, paced the small apartment, the weight of the injustice pressing down on them both. They had the motive, the method, and the architects of the cover-up. But they still lacked Darren's own voice, the definitive proof of his intentions, the full, unvarnished story he had promised to tell. Maya kept replaying Darren's final text message. "If anything happens, don't believe what they say." He must have known. He must have prepared for this. The thought gnawed at her. What if there was something more, something they were missing? Days turned into a blur of dead ends and mounting frustration. Every lead seemed to vanish, every potential witness too scared to talk. Maya felt a suffocating sense of despair creeping in, a chilling realization that the system they were fighting was too vast, too entrenched. Frank, usually stoic, began to show signs of weariness, his shoulders slumping, his eyes losing some of their sharp glint. "It's a ghost chase, kid," he'd muttered one evening, rubbing his temples. "They've covered every track. There's nothing left at that site." But then, a memory flickered in Maya's mind, a casual conversation from months ago, easily dismissed at the time. Darren had been showing off a new, vintage-style wristwatch, a gift from his father. "It's old school, Maya," he'd said with a grin, tapping the watch face conspiratorially. "But it's got a secret, just like me." At the time, she'd laughed it off as typical Darren bravado, a playful hint at his private life. Now, it resonated with a terrifying, desperate significance. Could it be? Could he have hidden something there? A final message, a last act of defiance, knowing his time was running out? With a renewed surge of desperate, almost irrational hope, Maya returned to the scene of the crash. The expressway was pristine once more, traffic flowing as if nothing had ever happened. But the surrounding embankment, a forgotten patch of overgrown weeds and scattered litter, was still littered with fragments of debris, overlooked by the official cleanup crews. The sun beat down relentlessly, turning the search into a grueling ordeal. She spent hours, meticulously sifting through shattered glass, twisted pieces of bent metal, and fragments of personal belongings, her hands gloved, her eyes scanning every inch of the scorched earth. Each shard of glass, each broken piece of plastic, felt like a mocking reminder of the violence that had occurred. Frank, despite his earlier skepticism, joined her, his flashlight beam cutting through the encroaching dusk as the light began to fade. Just as despair began to fully consume them, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows, Maya's fingers brushed against something small, hard, and unmistakably familiar, half buried beneath a clump of weeds. It was Darren's wristwatch, miraculously intact despite the catastrophic impact, though its crystal was cracked like a spider web, mirroring the shattered truth. Her heart leapt into her throat, a surge of adrenaline pushing away the exhaustion. With trembling hands, Maya carefully examined the watch, her breath held captive in her lungs. It was a vintage piece, heavy and solid, a relic from another time. She remembered Darren fiddling with a tiny, almost invisible clasp on the side, a nervous habit he had. Following her instinct, her fingers fumbled, then found it. She pressed. With a faint click, a minuscule compartment popped open, revealing a perfectly concealed SD card, barely larger than a fingernail. It was a miracle, a desperate whisper from the grave. This had to be it. This had to be Darren's final word. Back in the apartment, the air crackled with a palpable mix of anticipation and dread. Frank stood over her shoulder, his gaze fixed on the laptop screen, as Maya, her hands still slightly trembling, carefully inserted the SD card. A single file appeared, stark and defiant. The truth.mp4. She clicked play. The screen flickered to life, revealing Darren Cole. His face was haggard, illuminated by a single harsh light, casting deep shadows that accentuated his exhaustion. But his eyes, though heavy with a profound weariness, burned with an unyielding fire, a desperate plea for justice. He was sitting in what looked like a nondescript hotel room, the background bare, as if he had stripped away all pretense for this final confession. He looked directly into the camera, his voice raspy but clear, filled with a raw, agonizing honesty that cut through the silence. "If you're watching this," Darren began, his voice barely above a whisper, each word a painful effort. "It means they got to me. It means they silenced me. But they won't silence the truth. Not completely. I made mistakes. I once sold out, yes. I was young, I was scared, I was desperate for a chance, for a way out of poverty. I compromised. But I didn't die because of that. I died because I dared to speak about it. Because I dared to expose the rot that's eating away at the heart of this sport, from the lowest leagues to the highest echelons." He paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath, his gaze unwavering, a silent challenge to his unseen killers. "They control everything. The contracts, the transfers, the very outcomes of games. It's a global network, a shadow empire built on lies and stolen dreams, on the exploitation of young talent and the corruption of a beautiful game." Then, the screen changed. A document flashed into view, then another and another, scrolling rapidly. A meticulously compiled list of 37 names. Players from Africa, Asia, Europe, South America, even some currently playing in the MLS, stars Maya recognized instantly, their faces flashing through her mind like a horrifying montage. Each name was accompanied by dates, amounts, and cryptic codes indicating their involvement in match-fixing schemes. Their careers bought and sold, their souls perhaps lost. It was a damning indictment, a web of corruption so vast and intricate it made Maya's head spin, a cold sweat breaking out on her forehead. Frank let out a low whistle, his face grim. "These are the ones they bought." Darren's voice continued, now stronger, filled with a fierce, almost desperate determination, a final roar against the darkness. "These are the ones whose dreams were twisted, whose lives were ruined, or who simply chose the easy path, blinded by greed. They are victims and perpetrators, all bound by the same blood pact, silenced by fear or complicity. I'm doing this for them, for the game, for anyone who still believes in fair play, in the purity of competition. This is my legacy. This is my truth." The video ended, leaving a profound, heavy silence in its wake, broken only by the hum of the laptop and Maya's ragged breathing. The truth, raw and horrifying, was finally out. Darren hadn't died to keep a secret. He had died to expose it. And now, the burden of that truth rested squarely on Maya's shoulders. The chilling final words of Darren Cole, echoing from the laptop screen, left Maya and Frank in a stunned, suffocating silence. The sheer scale of the corruption, the meticulous detail of the list of 37 names, confirmed their darkest suspicions. This wasn't just a few bad apples. This was a systemic rot, a shadow empire operating within the very heart of professional soccer. The question now was, who was the ultimate conductor of this orchestra of deceit? Darren's video had hinted at a powerful, unseen hand. Frank, his face grim, pointed to one name that had appeared subtly in Parr's financial records and Veronica Shaw's leaked meeting notes. Lucas Vane. Lucas Vane was not merely the CEO of Brighton and Hove Albion. He was a titan, a puppeteer pulling strings across the global sports landscape. His name evoked a mix of awe and fear in the industry. He was known for his ruthless business acumen, his almost pathological obsession with control, and his chilling ability to transform struggling clubs into financial juggernauts, often leaving a trail of broken ethics in his wake. While Darren Cole represented the raw passion and pure talent of the game, Vane embodied its cold, calculating commercialization. He rarely gave interviews, preferring to operate from the shadows. His influence felt more than seen, a ghost in the machine. Frank, leveraging his old contacts within the murky world of intelligence and corporate espionage, quickly yielded a crucial piece of evidence: surveillance footage from a high-end, discreet private club in Miami. The timestamp was damning, 12 hours before Darren's fatal accident. The footage, grainy but unmistakable, showed Lucas Vane meeting with Vincent Parr in a secluded booth. Their conversation was inaudible, but the body language spoke volumes. Vane, stern and unyielding, his face a mask of cold authority, while Parr, agitated and clearly subservient, fidgeted nervously. Maya felt a surge of cold fury. "There he is," she whispered, her voice tight with suppressed rage. The man pulling the strings, the one who decided Darren was disposable. It was a meeting between a master and his pawn, just before the pawn was discarded, a chilling tableau of power and betrayal. As they watched the footage, a deep, personal pain flickered across Frank Reyes's usually stoic face. He turned away from the screen, his gaze distant, haunted, his jaw clenched. Lucas Vane. "He's a different breed of monster," Frank murmured, his voice thick with a sorrow Maya hadn't heard before, a raw wound exposed. "He sees everything as a transaction. Every player, every game, every life. Just numbers on a ledger, disposable assets." He paused, taking a ragged breath, then slowly turned to Maya, his eyes brimming with a raw, unspoken grief that finally spilled over. "My son, Maya. His name was Daniel. He loved soccer more than anything in the world. He lived and breathed it. Played in the youth leagues, had real talent, a pure heart for the game." Frank's voice cracked, and he had to clear his throat, fighting back the tears. "Years ago, when Daniel was just a kid, 15, full of dreams, he got caught up in something similar. A local match-fixing ring, small time but ruthless. They threatened him, threatened our family if he didn't throw a game. He was terrified, Maya, absolutely terrified." A vivid, painful memory flashed through Frank's mind, unbidden and sharp. He saw Daniel, a bright-eyed teenager, his face alight with pure joy, dribbling a soccer ball across a sun-drenched field, the embodiment of youthful abandon. Then, the scene shifted abruptly, dissolving into a suffocating darkness. Daniel's face, pale and tear-streaked, contorted in fear as he clutched a phone to his ear, listening to a menacing voice. A blurred glimpse of Darren, younger, leaner, stepping into the fray, his jaw set, confronting shadowy figures in a dimly lit alley, a fierce, protective look on his face as he shielded Daniel. The image faded, leaving Frank with a fresh pang of grief. Darren Cole, he was playing in that same league back then, still unknown, just starting out. He saw what was happening to Daniel. He stood up for him. He tried to protect him, told those thugs to back off. Darren had a good heart, Maya. He really did. He believed in the game, in fair play. Frank's voice was a broken whisper now, filled with a profound sadness. But it was too late. The pressure, the fear, Daniel couldn't take it. The fear, it was too much. And then, he just vanished from our lives. Just days after Darren tried to help him. That system, it broke him. It broke us. The revelation hung heavy in the air, a devastating blow that explained Frank's unwavering commitment. Maya felt a wave of profound empathy, her own eyes welling up. Frank's relentless pursuit of justice wasn't just professional. It was a deeply personal crusade, fueled by the ghost of his own son, a desperate need to avenge a life stolen by the very corruption they were now fighting. Lucas Vane, the cold, calculating CEO, was a direct embodiment of the system that had crushed Daniel and now Darren. Later, Maya found an old, almost forgotten interview with Lucas Vane, a rare glimpse into his chilling philosophy. His words were chillingly pragmatic, devoid of any passion for the sport itself, delivered with the detached precision of a surgeon. Sport is not art. It is not passion. It is not about fair play or dreams. It is a product, Vane had stated, his voice smooth, confident, utterly devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the roar of a stadium. A product to be optimized, maximized, and controlled. Every variable accounted for, every outcome managed. Those who fail to understand that, those who cling to outdated notions of integrity or sentimentality, will be eliminated. The market has no room for sentimentality, only efficiency, only profit, only power. And if a piece of the product becomes defective, it must be removed. His words were a stark, terrifying echo of the leaked audio from Veronica Shaw, confirming their shared, ruthless ideology. Darren Cole, with his conscience, his fight for truth, and his unwavering belief in the purity of the game, was an anomaly in Vane's perfectly optimized, morally bankrupt machine. An anomaly that had to be removed permanently. Maya and Frank exchanged a grim look. The fight ahead was not just against criminals, it was against an ideology, a system that valued profit over human life. The chilling revelation of Lucas Vane's direct involvement, coupled with Frank's heartbreaking personal story, solidified the terrifying scope of the conspiracy. The system wasn't just corrupt, it was a living, breathing entity, with tentacles reaching into the highest echelons of power. But Darren's video and the subsequent clues pointed to a deeper, more personal betrayal. The pieces were falling into place, forming a mosaic of malice and cold calculation. Their immediate priority was to track down Vincent Parr, the missing agent, the only living link who could shed light on the final moments before Darren's death. News of Parr's disappearance had spread like wildfire through the underworld of sports agents and fixers. But Frank's old Interpol network was vast and efficient, a web of informants and contacts spanning continents. A crucial tip came in from a seasoned contact in Geneva. Vincent Parr had been apprehended by Swiss authorities while attempting a desperate, clumsy dash across the border into Liechtenstein, a tiny tax haven known for its discreet financial institutions. He was found huddled in the back of a rented car, clutching a fake passport and a substantial amount of undeclared cash. Clearly a man on the run, cornered and terrified. The news ignited a fresh spark of grim hope in Maya. Parr was a known coward, a survivor who valued his own skin above all else. He would talk. He had to. Maya and Frank immediately flew to Geneva, the long flight a blur of anticipation and dread. The interrogation room at the Swiss police headquarters was stark, cold, and smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale fear. Vincent Parr, stripped of his designer suits and his smooth, arrogant demeanor, was a pathetic figure. His usually slicked-back hair was disheveled, his face pale and clammy, his eyes darting nervously like a trapped animal. He was a man utterly broken by fear, not remorse, a shell of his former self. Frank, with his years of experience in breaking down hardened criminals and manipulative figures, began the questioning, his voice low, steady, and relentless. Parr initially tried to deny everything, to feign ignorance, to spin a web of convenient lies, but the weight of the evidence, the massive insurance policy, the grotesque image rights clause, the leaked audio of Veronica Shaw, the damning surveillance footage of his meeting with Vane, slowly, inexorably crushed his resistance. Each piece of evidence Frank laid out was a hammer blow, chipping away at Parr's crumbling facade. Finally, with a guttural cry that was more whimper than shout, Parr cracked. He slumped forward, his head in his hands, his body trembling. His voice was a trembling whisper, barely audible, choked with what might have been tears, or simply mucus from his terrified sniffling. "I didn't kill Darren," he sobbed, his words muffled. "I swear to God I didn't. I'm not a murderer. They just told me to bring him to a location, a warehouse near the airport. They said they only wanted to talk to him, to reason with him, to make him understand the consequences of his actions. They said it would be quick, clean, no violence, just a final warning. I didn't know they'd kill him. I swear. I just delivered him." His words were a desperate, pathetic plea for absolution, but his eyes, when he finally looked up, betrayed the chilling truth. He had been a willing accomplice, a craven participant, blinded by greed and paralyzed by fear. He might not have pulled the trigger, but he had opened the door. "Who are they, Vincent?" Frank pressed, his voice low and steady, like a predator closing in for the kill. "Who gave the orders? The final, ultimate order?" Parr hesitated, his eyes wide with terror, darting nervously at the one-way mirror, as if the very walls held listening ears. He took a shaky breath, then exhaled a name. Not the club," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to his usual booming confidence. "It wasn't Vane. He was just the middleman. The orders came from higher up, from MLS, from the very top of the league." Maya's breath hitched, a sharp gasp escaping her lips. MLS ? The very league Darren Cole was the golden boy of? The face of American soccer? The shock was palpable, a cold wave washing over her. This was beyond anything she had imagined. But Parr wasn't finished. He swallowed hard, his voice barely audible, as if the words themselves were poison, burning his throat as they escaped. The person who gave the final order. It was someone with blood relation to Darren. Someone who couldn't let the truth come out because it would destroy everything they built. Their whole family, their empire, everything. The words hung in the stark, silent room, a devastating, unimaginable twist that shattered Maya's perception of reality. Not just a powerful, faceless entity, but someone with a direct, familial tie to Darren. Someone he should have been able to trust implicitly. The implications were staggering, pushing the boundaries of Maya's comprehension, twisting her stomach into knots. The cold, corporate hit had just become a deeply personal, horrifying act of betrayal, a Shakespearean tragedy played out in the brutal world of professional sports. The system wasn't just external, it was interwoven with the very fabric of Darren's life, a monstrous secret hidden within his own lineage, a family secret that had claimed his life. Maya reeled from Vincent Parr's confession, the revelation of a blood relation at the heart of Darren's murder spinning her head. The words echoed in her mind. Someone with blood relation. It was a twist so cruel, so intimate, it felt like a violation of everything she thought she knew. Her mind frantically searched for answers, for a name, for a face that could match such a monstrous act. Then, a detail from Darren's past, long forgotten, resurfaced with chilling clarity. The mysterious incident when he was suddenly cut from the U-18 national team. There had to be a link, a hidden thread connecting that past anomaly to this present horror. With renewed urgency, Maya and Frank scoured their archives, digging deeper into the past, searching for any anomaly connected to Darren's early career. Days blurred into nights, fueled by stale coffee and a desperate need for answers. Their persistence paid off. Tucked away in a forgotten corner of an old server, buried beneath layers of innocuous data, Frank unearthed an even older audio recording. It was a clandestine conversation, raw and unfiltered, between Veronica Shaw and a deep, cold, authoritative male voice. The static crackled, but the words were chillingly clear. Veronica, voice tight with barely suppressed panic, a tremor in her usually unshakable tone. Darren is messing everything up. The contract, the Phoenix Group, he's going too far. He's talking to people. Male voice, calm, chillingly resolute, each word a hammer blow of absolute power. He's breaking the code of silence. I don't want him dead. He's my son. But if he speaks, we all die. Everything we built will crumble. Frank's face went stark white, the color draining from his features as if he'd seen a ghost. His eyes, usually sharp and knowing, were wide with a sickening wave of recognition, a mixture of horror and profound sadness. He knew that voice. He knew it intimately. It was David Cole, Darren's own father, the powerful CEO and revered founder of the MLS. The man who had built the very league Darren was the golden face of. The man who was supposed to be his protector, his patriarch. The revelation hit Maya with a force that stole her breath, a gasp caught in her throat. David Cole, not Marcus, the father, the architect of the entire MLS empire. The implications were staggering, twisting her stomach into knots. A vivid, painful scene from the past flashed through Frank's mind, unbidden and sharp, as if the audio recording had unlocked a buried memory. He saw a younger David Cole, his face contorted in a furious, almost monstrous mask, veins bulging in his neck as he screamed, his voice echoing with raw, unbridled rage. He was yelling at a teenage Darren, barely 15, who stood with his head bowed, eyes fixed on the ground, shoulders slumped in utter defeat. The boy's face was pale, tear-streaked, his youthful dreams visibly shattering around him. David's words, though muffled by the passage of time, were filled with venom, accusing Darren of recklessness, of almost destroying everything. Frank's voice was a strained whisper now, filled with a mixture of sorrow, bitter understanding, and a deep-seated anger. In 2014, David Cole forced Darren to withdraw from the U18 national team. It wasn't for vague, internal reasons, Maya. It was to cover up an old match-fixing scandal, a massive betting scheme that David himself was deeply involved in. He used his son as a pawn, a shield to divert suspicion. He protected his son back then, yes, by sacrificing his immediate dream, but he never forgave Darren for that mistake, for nearly exposing him, for being a liability. David saw it as a betrayal, a stain on his carefully constructed image. Frank continued, his voice heavy with the weight of years of hidden truths. Darren returned to football on his own merits, Maya. He clawed his way back, goal by goal, proving he didn't need his father's shadow, building his own legend, a legacy of purity and talent. He became bigger than David's plans, an icon in his own right. But David couldn't accept that his son, his own flesh and blood, could potentially ruin the empire he had built, the legacy he had so meticulously crafted. Darren's defiance, his growing conscience, his refusal to be controlled again, became a direct threat to everything David held dear: his power, his fortune, his very identity. For David, Darren wasn't just a son. He was a loose end, a dangerous liability threatening to unravel everything. The truth was a bitter pill, almost impossible to swallow. Not a brother driven by sibling rivalry, but a father, consumed by an insatiable hunger for power and control, willing to sacrifice his own child. David Cole, the public icon, the visionary leader, was a monster willing to sacrifice his own son to protect his dark secrets and his multi-billion-dollar empire. The silence Darren had broken was not just a code among criminals. It was a pact within his own family, a pact enforced by blood and ultimately by death. The weight of the truth, heavy and suffocating, settled upon Maya and Frank. Marcus Cole, the brother, the architect of a family tragedy masked as a corporate necessity. The sterile interrogation room in Geneva, once a place of revelation, now felt like a cage, trapping them with a secret too, dangerous to hold. They had the evidence: Darren's video, Parr's confession, the financial trails, the leaked audio. But how do you expose a man like Marcus Cole, a titan of the MLS, whose influence seemed to permeate every corner of the sports world? Maya knew that traditional methods of publishing information would be futile. A carefully written article would be buried, dismissed as a smear campaign, or worse, lead to their own demise. Marcus Cole was too powerful, too adept at controlling information and manipulating narratives. In the days that followed, Maya and Frank embarked on a desperate race against time. They knew Marcus Cole wouldn't sit idly by. Every move they made had to be meticulously calculated, every step taken with extreme caution. Maya decided to utilize a less controlled medium, a platform where her voice could reach far and wide without being stifled by Marcus's media machine, an investigative podcast. She spent countless hours editing Darren's poignant farewell video, seamlessly weaving in excerpts from Parr's trembling confession and the undeniable evidence Frank had unearthed, crafting a devastating, irrefutable narrative. The date for the podcast's release was set. Maya sat before her computer, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. She was about to broadcast the full story, to expose Marcus Cole's empire of lies to the entire world. But just moments before she could hit publish, a frantic, insistent knocking erupted at her door. FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. A cold, authoritative voice echoed from behind the door. We have a warrant for search and seizure. Maya froze, her blood running cold. Police officers swarmed into the apartment, their flashlights sweeping across the walls plastered with notes and documents. Her computer was seized, every hard drive, every USB stick meticulously sealed in evidence bags. Frank, who was at his office, received an immediate suspension notice. Every door seemed to slam shut in their faces, an invisible wall of power and manipulation rising to block their path. Despair washed over Maya, a suffocating blanket. They had come too close. Marcus Cole had made his move. All their efforts seemed to have been for naught. She sat numbly in the now empty apartment, a profound sense of helplessness engulfing her. Hours later, as Maya was sinking deeper into the abyss of despair, a faint glimmer of hope appeared. Tucked away in her mailbox, a discreet, anonymous USB drive lay waiting. Who could have sent it? With a strange intuition, Maya plugged the USB into an old, hidden laptop she had kept as a last resort. Inside, a single audio file. She pressed play. It was Darren's voice, calm yet haunting, recorded just days before his death. A final, agonizing testament to the world. If I die, please tell the true story. Not about me, but about those who no longer have a voice, those crushed by this machine, those dreams shattered in the dark. They have no voice. Be their voice. Accompanying the USB was a thin, carefully printed document. Maya flipped through the pages, her eyes widening in disbelief. It was a massive strategic partnership agreement between MLS and FIFA, a multi-billion-dollar deal, bearing the signature of David Cole, Darren and Marcus's father. David Cole, the revered founder of the MLS, a legend of American soccer, a man Maya had always held in the highest esteem. This was the third shock, more painful and devastating than any before it. Maya saw David Cole's smiling face on the cover of a recent Time magazine, the man who brought MLS to the world. A self-satisfied smile, eyes radiating power. There was no mention of Darren Cole. Everything had been erased. His name, his legacy, had been buried beneath the empire built by his own father and brother. A synthesized voice, cold and clinical, emanated from the USB, a grim, final conclusion. Football didn't kill him. Silence did. Maya stared at the laptop screen, where David Cole's image still smiled back at her. Tears streamed down her face, not just for Darren, but for the brutal truth of a family consumed by power and money, a family that had destroyed its own. She leaned back in her chair, a profound ache in her chest, a mix of sorrow and burning indignation. He once said, "Football isn't life, it's just a reflection of it." She whispered, her voice hoarse. But now I know. If the mirror is bent long enough, we no longer see the truth. And when the truth is distorted, people like Darren, like Daniel, they get swallowed whole. But I won't let silence win. Never.